Good morning.
Now this morning, who have you got for us?
Yes, well, I'm talking now on George Lance, who was a very prominent resident of Warrnambool in the 19th century. And amongst his great range of talents, of course, by trade, he was a plumber and gas fitter, but he was an inventor, a writer, an artist and a musician, and a secretary. And he'd been a soldier. He was born in London, and he had amazing adventures in the Crimean War, including an episode where he was captured by the Bazouks, the Turks, and he somehow escaped. And he did come to Warrnambool eventually. He became in 1863, set up a plumbing business, firstly in Library Street and then later in Fairy Street, where his son was the prominent proprietor there. That building is still there. He was an inventor, and amongst his inventions are the Eureka deep well pump, which was highly regarded, and the one that got most interest, his Lance patent cesspan. And this was essentially a bucket with a spring lid, but it was highly sought after by, he managed to convince all the local shires and councils to take these on as their official pans, and that was quite a success.
Have you got one at the Historical Society? Do any of them survive?
We haven't got a pan. We've got a picture of it, which I meant to bring. But I remember Horace Lawson, the town clerk, commenting to the council once that the council in Warrnambool had bought 1,700 of these
1,700.
pans. So it was quite a mass production.
Wow. Gee.
But he was also very important in the early installation of gas. He had gas operating in his business years before the gasworks were here and years before it was common in the town. And he became the official gas fitter for the Warrnambool gasworks, which of course were near the railway station.
Right.
He installed gas in most of the major buildings, for instance, St John's, the old St John's Church, the one that was burnt down later. But he was. It was also very, very high profile in the town because he was in the fire brigade, he was in the bowls, he was a foundation member of the Bowls Club, he was also in the friendly societies, the Odd Fellows, and he was in the volunteer corps like Charles Scaborio, and he actually was the first in that. He was the first band leader of the volunteer corps in the 1860s. He played the cornet,
Right.
But he was also a writer, and he wrote a great number of articles in the Warrnambool Standard. But the ones that we're mostly interested in, he wrote anonymously under the name The Seer, and the series of articles that we find historically important is when he wrote about pretending to meet the ghost of an old caretaker or in the town from the 1860s, and he's writing in the 1890s. So they meet each night, and the Stephen Waller, the ghostly figure, describes what it was like in the 1860s, and the seer, George Lance, describes what it's like in the 1890s. You can imagine the historical importance of this, but they're also very witty, very whimsical, very racy writing, very readable.
Were they very accurate as well? Were they designed to be? Right,
yes, because he'd been there, you see, himself in the 1860s, so he knew what he was writing about. Now, he was secretary of the Mechanics' Institute for a few years and vice president at one stage, particularly at the time when they bought that series of European paintings in the late 1890s. He was head of the School of Art and Design, and he was the leading figure when the old art gallery, as part of the museum, was officially open. And he was very active in promoting that collection and inquiring works of art. And for this reason, he is regarded as the founder of our Warrnambool Art Gallery. And we have a George Lance room up there. And Because, to get to the more important point, he was a noted artist. Uh-huh. Apart from all these other activities, he's also an artist with considerable artistic merit, historical interest. He mainly painted oil and watercolour seascapes, and he was prize winner in all the competitions that were around, and 11 of his paintings today are in the art gallery. You probably know we've just had an exhibition of George Lant's works.
Right, yes.
Now, because the government subsidy, the government gave a subsidy to art galleries equivalent each year to the value of what had been donated to the art gallery. So George Lance was pretty active in painting a nice one of his paintings, donating it to the gallery, having it valued at £10, £15, £20, and then getting that subsidy back. And one of the main works of art that he did then was building this model ship called the Arethusa, which is in Flagstaff Hill today in the Great Circle Gallery entrance. With another man, Peter Diggins, he built this model, valued it at in the 20-something pounds, and then donated it to the art gallery. But unfortunately, in Melbourne, they said, that's not a work of art, you can't get your subsidy. Oh. So we ended up with this lovely model, but he didn't get the money.
The money back, right.
I mentioned that he was in the music. He was also very active in the Baptist church as a Sunday school supervisor, as a choir master, and so forth.
Yes, a very worthy addition to the board. Yeah.
Yes. He was known for his rather quick temper, and at one stage he was in the band, and there was a new band leader, and the band leader, George, came late, and the band leader says, you've brought the wrong instrument, so George was put offside. They started playing. The band leader said, no, that's all rubbish. That you can't have that sort of playing. So George stood up, threw off his hat, threw the instrument away, and walked out.
Right.
And the result of that, the write-up in the paper, was so it was so libelous against the band leader, who was a German origin gentleman, that he sued the paper. Oh. And all the people in the band stood up for the conductor, except George Lance. He wouldn't put his name to supporting the man in his lawsuit. So he certainly was an interesting character.
Yes, indeed. Wow. Yes. Lovely. Oh, Elizabeth, thank you again very much.
Right.